Hello everyone, this is Jacob Hopia, the producer of The Apex. In this episode, it is another segment of The Disruptor. Justin Woods and Jan take a deep dive into the line between sales and marketing. Shawaiz throws a few user experience curveball questions. And we all arrive at one single conclusion. The line between B2B and B2C marketing is massively shifting. Listen closely if you want some key pieces of advice that you can use on a daily basis to keep your business from getting disrupted. If you want to support us, there are 3 ways to do so. One is to donate to our cause at www.patreon.com/theapexpodcast. Second, visit our merch line that is proudly partnered with Envision Clothing Company at envisionclothingcompany.com. The final one is completely free. All we ask is if you learn something from this episode or know someone that needs to hear our message, share it with them. Please subscribe and hope this pushes you toward your apex.
Good morning, beautiful people. It's your host, Shawaiz Bhatti, with my friend Jan Almasy.
What up?
And our guest today is Justin Woods.
Good morning.
Good morning.
The man, the myth, the legend himself. If anybody's wondering, it's like 6:30 in the morning. So we're just chilling. The only one that's probably fully awake is Justin because he's a psychopath. But
that's true.
It's day 743 of quarantine.
Dude, those memes are killing me. Oh my God.
I only have milk and cheese in my fridge.
Oh, jeez.
And
at least you can survive off of that, right?
You could. I am. I've only been to the hospital twice this week. And like Jan said, it's 6:30 in the morning because that's the perfect time to do a podcast episode.
Yes, it is, especially about what we're talking about.
It's actually a little late.
Is that according to the Yako train?
Jocko. Oh my God.
You know,
I'm going to punt it.
He's doing it just to mess with you.
I know he's doing it just to mess with you. He's just trying to get a rise out of you.
Don't let him get in your head.
Yeah.
Normal face.
Okay, guys, what are we actually talking about today? I feel like people are going to listen to this and be like, "Oh,
we're gonna try and talk about some sales and marketing."
What?
And I'm going to throw in some UX in there.
Beautiful. So I want to kind of start off this conversation with a conversation about just like the basics of what design thinking actually is. And so, Shawaiz, I'd actually like if you would explain a little bit about kind of, what do you call him, the godfather or the grandfather of UX and design thinking, Mr. Don Norman.
Yeah, I would call him the founder.
The founder, yeah. Because if you could talk about that a little bit, because I feel like on the last episode, I got a lot of questions back from the audience that, you know, we had this whole conversation with John Kuntz about design thinking and empathy mapping and all this other type of stuff. And I feel like we need to backtrack just a little bit before we dive into like the sales side, just so the audience really understands like what's going on. Because me and Justin, I'm sure, are going to go on a rant as soon as we start traveling down the side of the mountain. That snowball's not going to be able to stop. So we might as well set the scene.
All right. So, yeah, Don Norman, he's actually my inspiration. He's the person who got me into UX. Don Norman was formerly the vice president of technologies or the vice president of advanced technologies for Apple. And he is more popularly known as the founder of User Experience. He coined the term user experience, I believe. And basically, his whole thing was designing technologies that are intuitive, right? And what that means is if you can design anything and people aren't focused really on the design of that technology, but rather they're using it for its intended use, like they pick it up and they know what to do with it because it's so intuitive, that's a good user experience. So designing technologies that, you know, people don't have to think too hard about how to use it, how it works, what's the purpose for it. It's actually kind of crazy. One of the episodes that I did with Jan on the Apex podcast, we talked about Don Norman. He was talking about doors, right? Do you remember this?
I do remember.
So-
yeah, the door handles.
Yeah, the door handle. So when you go up to a door and it's like, you don't know if you should push or pull, even though sometimes it'll say pull on it, you still like people still push. So how do you design the perfect door that, doesn't make people frustrated with it and like break the glass and want to throw something? So that's his whole premise. And Don Norman is the guy who started all of UX, and it's just branched out to so many different things now. We have customer experience. That's sort of a subcategory of user experience. This is something that, any major company, Facebook, Amazon, Apple, Netflix, Google, they're all focusing on this now. This is the thing that drives sales. Justin, you might agree or disagree with that. We might get into that a little bit. But essentially, Don Norman, when he founded this field, this is what really helped Apple become the number one company in the entire world, with the iPhone completely obliterating BlackBerry. BlackBerry was the number one phone in the phone market, the cell phone market, and then Apple came along and destroyed it. And it's basically because it's this intuitive phone, but it also it looks beautiful as well. So it's technology that you know how to use. It's very easy to use, but you also want to use it just because of how it looks and how it feels.
Mm-hmm.
So that is sort of like the legacy of Don Norman. We can't create technologies that make people's lives easier. We have to delight the end user as well.
So him and Jobs really work closely together on a lot of that stuff?
Yeah, him and Jobs. And I
feel like if you're outside of the UX world or the UX space in general, that everybody just always thinks of Jobs. Like I hadn't really heard of Don Norman until we did our podcast.
Let's give credit where credit is due, though.
Right.
Because Jobs, right, he's not an academic like Don Norman was, but he had this gift that not a lot of people have, and it was this intuition of knowing what people want before they know that they want it. And that's really what led to Apple.
Right.
And all of these amazing technologies, first with the iPad, and then it was the iPhone, and now it's the MacBook, which is probably the most intuitive laptop.
And we call that sales.
And we call that sales. I think Justin wants to talk now.
Dude, let it rip. No, like I feel like, so for those of you that are listening, I wanted Shawaiz to set the stage with that, because I feel like understanding that intuitive feeling is really what is causing this disruption that we're seeing inside of sales at both the like enterprise level, the small to medium enterprise level, and it's this line between traditional sales, which is identify customer needs, identify capabilities, marry the two together, make sale, versus with like super high performing salesmen. And you can, there's a bunch of books on stuff like this. Like I just listened to the Psychology of Sales by Brian Tracy, and he talks about a bunch of this stuff, where you can find these unidentified needs for a customer, form a like mentoring relationship, become a trusted advisor to that customer. And now you're selling products that they didn't even know they needed, but is genuinely helping them because it provides a positive user experience. Like it's all coming down to what is that user experience, and can you make the products that you're trying to sell to the customer so intuitively like easy to understand that they don't even have to make a choice. It just makes so much sense that they're on board. So Justin, I'll let you take that and run with it.
Well, yeah. As Shawaiz was getting into, what the really successful salespeople do is they figure out what the customer's next anticipated need is going to be. And as Jan alluded to, the job is to slowly build them up to wanting that need, to wanting to make that sale so it's their idea, not your idea. But the back end of that, and what everybody tends to forget about the salespeople, is they also need to end up going back to their organizations and then selling it internally. because typically we don't look at our sales team as the source of the R&D or the source of the next production process that makes that product possible. But I would say 9 times out of 10, it's the salespeople who are coming back and sitting down the production manager and saying, hey, could we make this? Or, sitting down the guys in the design lab or the R&D lab and saying, I'm seeing this out there. Here are some thoughts I have on a potential design or a potential option. And then they give it to the engineers, to the professionals to carry that ball over the goal line. And that is really what's happening. And the topic that, we sat down and wanted to talk about today is, how do sales and marketing relate to each other? Because as Jan alluded to, in larger organizations, those are 2 separate animals. Traditionally, to keep this very simple, is marketing's job is to put the content out there, to come up with the new products, to market those to whatever the demographic is that they're after. Mm-hmm. And then it's the salesperson's job to do that one-on-one interaction and close the sale, work out the details for that particular customer and carry it across the goal line. Mm-hmm. That's how it works in larger organizations. Even to give that another one, marketing brings in the leads, sales follows up on the leads, closes the sale. That's the way it generally works. However, for a majority of companies in the country, we don't have the luxury of having a marketing and a sales department.
Right.
Especially probably in the last 5 to 10 years, as everyone has tried to scale down and become leaner and do more with less. What you have now is a lot of the sales department is going to be responsible for. They're actually generating that marketing content. Mm-hmm. Then they're executing the plan. They're putting the sales together. They're the ones out there on the street.
Right.
So it's a much different world than it once was.
I ain't as good as I once was.
Okay, can you elaborate? You said in the past 5 to 10 years. Can you go into detail about what has changed?
Yeah. I can even say from my spend, when I started in the sales side of the business, my job was just to go out and talk to customers and convince them why they wanted to, in my case, buy a box from us. Mm-hmm. But over the years, I ended up taking on, I was the one designing the website. I was the one who ended up designing all the marketing content. Mm-hmm. All right. And then I'm the one out there trying to design, how do we put these particular products through the plan, as I once said. It was no longer you bring it in, you set it down on the desk, and you go out and you take somebody to lunch, maybe have a couple martinis and go to the golf course. Right. That world does not exist anymore.
Right.
So the salesperson is much more of a well-rounded professional nowadays, and they need to understand each of the different, to your guys' expertise, each of the different consumer demographics. Mm-hmm. Because while we sell a particular product, there's a great number of people who are very different who buy that product.
Right.
This reminds me of a video clip I think we've all seen. Jordan Belfort, he's the Wolf of Wall Street. He had this thing in his movie. It's the very beginning of the movie. He's like going around to people. He's like, sell me this pen. Mm-hmm. And so this is an actual like real life thing. He was on a British news show or something, and the anchor or the host of the show, he's like, you do this in the movie, show me how to sell this pen, right? Belfort elaborates a little on this. He's like, yeah, this is a test we do with salespeople. It's like, can you actually sell a pen? Because he mentions that one of the things that people tend to do is say like a bunch of wacky shit. Like, this is the best pen in the world. It'll write the great American novel for you and read it to you and all this stuff. But it's like people just want a pen or they don't. And so basically what the whole exercise is, can you identify needs of a customer? Mm-hmm. And if you identify that they don't need it, can you just let go and move on, right? And I think with what you're talking about now, you have to do like marketing as well. You have to like design the website, put the products together. This is the reason, I believe, why Amazon is so successful. Because when you go to Amazon and you have the thing in mind, what you want to buy. So you type it in, you find what version of it you want, you click it. But then what's at the bottom?
Products that other people have purchased or recommended.
Exactly.
Recommended for you based on your history versus what other people have bought. And even the nicer thing about Amazon is I type in what I want, but there happen to be 75 other things that are close to that. And the next thing you know, I was like, well, I really came here for a pen. But this badass .028 erasable ink pen that I see right here, I'm going with that one.
Yeah.
You know, and that's the magic to it. Is
It's like
to have the hubris as a salesperson to not be fully convinced that you know what the other side wants. I mean, my job is to give you the best options, is to tell you, you know, based on what I've seen here, you know, these are the things I think you want. You know, often what I do is I'll have someone bring me in and say, hey, we want you to just you give us a price for this. I said, absolutely. I'll give you a price for that. But I'm also going to give you, you know, 3 or 4 other things or variants on that may be more cost effective, maybe more user friendly, may assemble faster in your process, things you didn't think to ask for. But I'm going to give you what you want, and then these other things to consider.
Unidentified wants and needs.
Yes, and let them make the decision.
Yeah,
you know, I'm pushing you. You know, that's the other thing. You know, people view salespeople as we all sell insurance or use cars. We don't. You know, my job is not to sit here and, you know, what I say is it's always be closing. That's the cliche around sales. You know, it should always be closing. That's total crap. All right. It's total crap. What you should always be doing is you should always be building towards the opportunity to close.
Right. Yeah. You should always be putting prospects into the pipeline.
But everything I'm presenting is just trying to move them a little step forward. A little step forward. I'm building, you know, I'm building a castle, and then I'm building a moat around it to keep other salespeople out. So that's my job. All right, and now it's their choice. They can put the bridge up or down and decide whether they want to sleep in that castle. But it's still going to be built in very much the same way.
Yeah. Jan, you look like you want to say something.
I do. So like, what he just hit on right there is like, you should always be closing, right? And in the sales world, right, the really high performing salesmen know that that's crap. In the marketing world, high performing marketers know that focusing 110% on the metrics is also crap, right? I just used this example yesterday. I was doing a consult with the Akron Urban League, and I was like, I have less than 3,000 followers on Instagram, right? But I don't pay for ads, and organically I get between 150 and 300 likes a post, right? Because I have a relationship with my audience. So I don't have to have high metrics. I don't have to be constantly putting out marketing material designed to sell product. I can be putting out thought leadership material, you know, to the point that we put out some type of podcast episode. A person listens to it in California, and now we have business in California. You know, if you provide your customer with as much end value as possible, and to Justin's point, like you say, here's what you told me you want. Here's what I believe you may need. It's a completely different relationship. If you just give somebody what they want and it's not helping them perform to the best of their ability, you run the risk of them underperforming basically and then being not satisfied. And one of the things that I want Justin's opinion on actually is I thought of this when I was down in Knoxville over the past weekend. And I was like, you have to treat clients like family, but not in the way that people assume you treat family, right? Family, they're like, you love them, you know, you always want the best for them, like that type of stuff. I'm like, no, family is, you know, you want the best for them, but you don't enable bad habits. And as a salesperson, sometimes I feel like you fall into the trap of enabling bad habits in clients just because you want to close a sale. When in reality, if you would take a little bit of extra time to keep them in the pipeline, build a relationship, allow them to see you as somebody that's a trusted mentor, somebody that could be an advisor that genuinely is trying to help them increase revenue, whatever their goal is, increase revenue. Everybody wants to increase revenue, but get more awareness. You know, what is the specific goal that they are asking you to help them with? And on both the marketing and the sales side, your responsibility really is not to just give them what they want, but give them the highest performing, easily accessible, quickest to assemble product or service that you know they need that will take them to the next level. Because if you can take that customer to the next level, guess what, guys? They have more revenue and they'll be willing to buy more stuff. And who are they going to buy it from? The person that got them to that next level or that next echelon. So I don't know. Justin, what are your thoughts on that?
No, you're right. And your analogy of the family was very good. But the other thing about the family is you can't force the family to do something. Right. Your family is your family. So you're going to give them, say, these are the best options and let them make a decision. Often in that scenario that I gave you, the customer, the first time around typically just buys what they ask me for. But you've planted that little nugget, and then 6 months down the road when metrics have changed or needs have changed in the company, you're the first person they think about. Of the 6 guys who I asked to bid this particular job or do this for me, only one of them, or maybe 2 of them, took the initiative to offer, things outside of the scope. And while at that time I wasn't interested in it, those are the 2 that I think of.
And the advantage that you might have over the other person that offered those things is you weren't pushy. And they feel like they can talk to you about potential options without you just slamming quotes down their throat.
And they're also, the reason I always build it is, there's 2, because salespeople tend to be arrogant. It's just a part and parcel of the job.
Yeah, I feel like it just attracts that type of personality type.
So you've always got to remind yourself, my shit stinks. All right, I'm not super awesome. There's somebody else out there who's probably approaching this exactly the way I am. So you need to continue to always to push, to drive, to say, how can I take this to the next level? How can I make this a little better? All right, I constantly need to be doing that. And just like I said, leading people to where they need to be. Right, and showing them, following up even after, per se on that first one, you might have lost because your price, at that time we're buying on one thing and one thing only, the price of what we want. All right, but it's the guy who's tenacious and who follows up and says, hey, how are things going? Are things going well? Have you considered this? Back to the marketing side of it, are you generating content to reinforce the way you sell stuff?
And the cool thing is that with marketing, right? He just said what? Reinforce the sales side, right? It's not just like marketing anymore is not just to get leads into the pipeline. So like the way that I've been studying just the progression of marketing, right, is when Madison Avenue first became a thing. Right? It was big, flashy. Who has the it was to the point that back then, who has color ads versus black and white? Who can get the edge over another person to attract attention? Because it was new. It was this big thing. Like it was just starting to happen. Everybody was hype about it. And at this point, everybody is so oversaturated with ads that are trying to sell that they can't stand them. So with the products side specifically, because I feel like that's something, that's Justin's realm is really product. Do you guys sell services? Or is it more product based?
Well, it's a funny story. Is we sell the service to push the product. So I am the service. So the service is that consultative selling process. All right. So where you can pay a packaging consultant in our industry, you can pay a packaging consultant to come in and tell you, oh, change this, change that. You do this for quality, this for brand appeal, and all these other things. That's the service that I offer. Right?
Okay.
I offer free of charge, though we all know there is no free lunch in the world.
Right.
So you to some degree pay for that. I'm selling you a box. That's the vehicle for which I generate revenue. But the service that we offer is, helping people find the best package, helping people solve their problems. Typically I go in and say, what are your corporation's key goals this year? What are the metrics? What's the boss being measured on? And then I find a way, how do we fit my product into supporting that particular goal?
Yeah. And where I was going to go with the marketing half, right, is that marketing now more than ever, and anybody that's listening to this that owns a business needs to hear me loud and clear. Marketing now more than ever needs to be about educating and empowering your client, not just selling product, because they're making 70 to now 80% of the buying decision online, which means that you as soon as they type in any type of keyword search result, they're pulling up whatever's in the first page of Google. Normally it's the top 5 links that they, look through. The only way that you're going to make it up there is by providing high quality educational content, video, audio, blog, whatever, and not just like for only the price of $19.99 plus shipping and handling, blah, 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 because that doesn't offer any value. And Google is starting to catch on to it too. Like Google is pulling keywords from audio now. They're pulling keywords from video. They're the technology is getting to the point that they're able to do that, which means that by the time the customer makes it to your website, they've more than likely looked at your product or service in multiple other places. And if the only thing they see is you selling product, they're probably not going to necessarily feel comfortable trusting what's on your website, because they're going to be like, well, there's all these other companies that are telling me the ins and outs of how to use this, practical applications, how to troubleshoot. Oh, I'm going to go with this company because it seems like their support is so much better, because in their marketing even, they're trying to educate me and empower me. So it makes me feel as though once I do purchase the product, they're going to take care of me on the back end.
I love doing podcasts because the more we do these episodes, the more I realize I'm very unknowledgeable about a lot of things. And so we we do these and I learn a lot in like 15 or 20 minutes. And I bring this up because I'm hearing you guys talk and I'm relating this a lot back to episodes we've done in the past. And so there's a question that I have. Justin, you mentioned salespeople are sort of arrogant. They have this personality to them because you kind of have to be a little confident to go up to someone you don't know and get them to, buy something that you're trying to sell them. And Jan, we've talked about personal branding a lot. This is a question I have running through my mind now. It's like, you can't just, have a product that you want to sell anymore. It has to be like meeting your customers' wants and needs. It has to be, like Jan, you said, being a mentor to them.
You have to create a journey.
Right.
Is what you need to do.
So I'm trying to formulate this question.
You're good.
Justin, do you think that personal branding plays a role into how sales people create this experience for their customers? And Jan, while he is answering that, I want you to think about, like, because you're more in tune, I think, with the marketing side of things. Do marketers need to be aware of their company's brand, and does that brand has to have some personal aspect to it, and what is the importance of that? So Justin, go ahead.
I will answer this from my opinion only, because
Please.
This may be somewhat controversial. But yes, the personal brand is everything. How you are perceived by the person on the other side of the table matters. Because every buyer has that predetermined, arrogant, overpaid sales guy in their mind. All right. So the first job you have to do is build, I'm a normal person. All right. I deserve to be here. I'm not just a salesperson. When I started into sales, the thing that I always push is I started my journey as actually funny story, is a market research intern. Then I moved into a design job. Then I did project management. So what I always told people is I said, yes, I'm a salesperson, but I actually know what I'm talking about. All right. I did the work. I know how to do this. I'm not like every other sales guy you have in here who's just all they do is sell. Right. And a lot of salespeople come up that way, but a lot don't. So to your point, building a personal brand is super important. Nowadays it's nice. We have LinkedIn. All right. So LinkedIn is beautiful. I utilize, LinkedIn, and I try and send prospects to say, hey, connect, learn a little bit more about me, long before I ever sit in front of them to sell them something. When I just identify someone as a potential lead for a product, I'm proactively reaching out to them and say, hey, utilize me to answer. I'm a resource. So if you have questions about packaging, if you want to fact check your current supplier, I'm the guy to talk to. Then they can jump to my page and see, holy cow, this millennial has worked at the same place for 15 years. He has done every job from intern up to, at this point now, second in command. Right. And in addition to this, he's a certified purchasing and supply chain manager. He teaches at the university level. All right. So when I come in there, they are typically more congenial with me. Now, granted, that supply chain thing was very strategic on my point, because I know I'm sitting across from people who have that job and don't even carry the certification that their sales guy carries. So they're very much more interested in talking to me. And I got that certification before I became a salesperson. I did that when I was still doing the design and the project management stuff. But it's, immensely useful to me.
Yeah, I just have a nursing degree.
Just,
What'd you say?
I said I just have a nursing degree. I don't have anything to do with marketing.
Stop. I had a degree in finance, and I started designing boxes. So don't get too.
Yeah.
We all do
Yep.
different things in life,
Mm.
But that's what makes some of the best people. Because the guy who goes to school for what he ends up doing doesn't have that humility.
Mm-hmm. I would agree with that.
They do believe their shit does not stink. I know everything there is to know about this particular topic. I'm the subject matter expert. Sit down. I'm smart enough. I sit there. I listen. You tell me what's going on. I say, oh, well, what about this? What about that? As we talked about last time, my goal is to bring a fresh perspective to everything. And say, okay, well, let's just at least try it. I'm going to take the risk out of it for you. You don't have to pay for this particular stuff. Let's give it a go. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, we probably learned something to make the next iteration work even better. And that's the back and forth. That's how it works. Does that answer your question, Shawaiz?
Yeah, that was beautiful.
What was mine again?
I
Do we remember?
Yeah, the this whole idea of like marketers who are trying to market their company being aware of their brand and if that brand sort of has to have this personal touch and what the benefit of that is.
So, my biggest, this will be like two halves. So the first half would be if you are a marketer, that is like not C-suite level or like not an exec level marketing person, your personal brand matters to an extent, but you don't have to directly reflect like the brand of the company at that level. Mm-hmm. You just need to make sure that you know that the best thing that company can do is not be perfect. And that's something that a lot of people I feel struggle with. They want everything to be, right on point, the lighting to be perfect, the camera angles to be on point, every shot needs to be slick. Spend 1,500 hours writing a perfect script and all this other stuff. And what I've really found is like with tech, the way that it is right now, you can save so much more money by trying multiple iterations of something quickly and deploying them, getting data back, figuring out which one of those did the best and doubling down on that, than spending all of this upfront time and investment trying to put together the perfect thing and then watching it flop and seeing $8,000 just wiggle out the door. When you could have done a couple of videos like I do all the time. I mean, you could look at my Facebook, you look at my Instagram, my TikTok, like wherever you want to look on my social media. My personal brand is beta testing everything that we do for Apex all the time, constantly. Like one of our mentors, Steve Hoffman, was just talking to me the other day. He was like, dude, I get on my Facebook feed and like 5 posts in a row, all I see is your face. I was like, I just post constantly, right? Because the algorithm only shows it to like 10 to 15% of people. And so if I post a question, I'm getting active feedback, then I know, okay, this service is something that we should invest in creating because there's a blatant need, because I'm educating on a process and the types of questions that people are asking me because I'm educating on a process reflect the types of services we need to build. But they're not perfect. I'm live streaming from my truck. I'm taking a quick video in the elevator. I'm just putting out a random tweet or a question, right? And that's where you can really take that corporate brand and make it feel more human, make it feel more personal. And it will allow your consumer base to feel so comfortable with engaging with your company that they're willing to be transparent and actually tell you what they need. Mm-hmm. And then don't try to guess. You don't have to guess at this point. We make all of our decisions with database decisions. And then the second half is if you are at that VP level or that C-suite level with Gen Zs coming up into the marketplace, they are going to be doing research into who their bosses are going to be. Mm. That wasn't a thing for a long time, right? But now it's a thing. And if you don't have a personal brand that reflects the core values of the business that you're associated with, and you're trying to retain top level, high quality talent, it's going to be more difficult because just like like if you were going to go purchase a TV, right? And you saw a TV that was by a manufacturer that you know and you trust, but had 0 reviews on it and had 0 star ratings or anything versus another TV with a brand that you know, but you haven't really messed with a ton that has 5-star reviews and there's 500 people that have engaged with it. Which TV are you buying?
As long as it's not from China.
The one with the reviews.
Yeah, the one with the reviews, right?
Those reviews aren't all legit.
Right, and they may not be, but
everything my wife reviews gets 5 stars.
but the principle,
we got a lot of free crap,
right? The principle is there. Like you are going to want to go with at least that generation, the youngest third, I would say, the youngest third of the millennial generation and the Gen Zs that are coming up into the marketplace. And Gen Zs, guys, you can't ignore them anymore because now they're 18 to 24.
Yeah,
like they're here and they're going to be in the workplace soon. Yep. And that's what they're looking for. They're going to be looking for who has a personal brand that I feel as though I'm being mentored before I even enter the organization. Like I feel like this person is providing me value before I'm even an employee. That makes me want to be an employee more so I can spend more time around this group of people to learn more versus a company that isn't as transparent about that kind of stuff or doesn't offer as much value. It's going to be hard. I don't know. I mean, it's going to be a difficult realm in the recruiting side because Gen Zs have the highest percentage out of any generation since the boomers that want to be entrepreneurial. So you're going to have to work hard to attract that talent.
Yeah. Yeah. I want to interject real quick and touch on a couple of things.
Shoot.
Because the big thing that you brought up is education. Mm-hmm. And education, it touches each of these points. It begins with, as you said, the job of the sales and the marketer is to educate the customer. It's not to sell the customer, it's to educate them on your product, educate them on the industry, educate them, even further, if you're going to get real deep into it, educate them more on their industry. The stuff that people hit on the most that I send out is when it is general economic data that is supporting, their industry to say, hey, we see these trends in your particular industry. Here are some services and things that we offer that may be of assistance to you, or to just basically say, I was actually sitting in a meeting with my boss yesterday and, we're sitting there talking with this gentleman and he just out of nowhere brings up, hey, how are mini satellites going to affect your business? And I'm just sitting here, like, man, I've got so much to learn still. This guy is just, because that particular company that we were talking to makes a lot of hardware for broadband services. Mm-hmm. And that's what they do. They're a relatively larger company for that market. But, he's sitting here asking about, what are you going to do about this thing that's going to totally disrupt your market? And getting them thinking about it. And I was like, oh, this guy's good. It's terrible. But then, from the other part is a salesperson, or as a professional, you constantly need to be in that game, educating yourself on what your customers are after, or educating yourself on what the most recent things in that particular industry are. Mm-hmm. And then the third facet is, to what Jan was pointing, your job is then to educate down. That gentleman who I was talking to, for the past 15 years, has constantly been teaching me. Mm-hmm. Unbeknownst to me, from the day he met me as a server in Peter Shear's right down the road from us, which is no longer there, he saw me and said, I'm going to make this guy a salesperson. And he's been constantly training me in that way. And I've tried, as recent as we've hired, some Gen Z people to say, all right, I want to constantly be training these guys. In the way that I sort them out are the ones who come back for more. Because there's the ones who, they, you can tell lights are on, nobody's home. They're not paying attention. They're not, retaining this information. Is to the ones who take what I taught them, and then take it to the next level. Those are the ones. Okay, yeah, that's the guy who hopefully someday is going to take my job.
Right.
So sounds like you're talking a lot about mentorship.
Yeah, it is mentorship, but it's internship and education. They're really the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
All a mentor is he's a teacher by another name, with the goal of educating his mentee, his student, on how they can be more successful.
Right.
I want to go back to something you mentioned earlier.
Mm-hmm.
You said in the world of marketing, it's a lot better if marketers, they send out some marketing thing like a video or an ad, and they iterate it and they iterate it and they iterate it.
Like the A/B test type. Yeah.
Wait, you guys aren't sending faxes?
I'm going to ignore that. Keep going.
But this is something that interests me because I'm a UX guy, and this is something that people do in UX research. Is if they want to make a product, right? They'll make an iteration of it, send it out, get some user feedback, figure out what it is that people like or don't like about it.
Right.
Work on the things that people don't like, keep the things that people do like, and then send it out again. And usually it's pretty quick. And this is what leads to really good products being made very quickly. With the power of social media that we have now and the power to market on social media, not really the power, but the necessity, I will say, to market on social media. What do you think about this whole iteration process that people have at their disposal, right? But they're not using. And Justin, I'm curious what you think about it as well, because you mentioned how sales and marketing, traditionally, they were these two separate animals, but now they're basically like the same thing. Talk a little bit about this idea of being able to easily go through the iterations, or a lot more easily now, on social media and the power of that.
Yeah, I know from the marketing side, and this is where marketing and sales is starting to intermix, right? Because prior to, I think the whole reason why it was two separate camps is because it required so much bandwidth to do both. Being a marketer was a full-time gig. Being a salesman, full-time gig. I mean, you had to bust ass on either side. Now, technology makes it so easy for those two things to intermingle that the salesmen can be marketers because they have HD cameras in their pockets. The marketers can be salesmen because there's so much easily accessible education out there to teach people how to sell that you can learn. And with the iteration process, because they're now intermixed and you have salesmen that are wearing marketing hats and marketers that are wearing salesman hats, we're on the marketing side specifically able to do those iterations even quicker than a standard A/B test using AI. Right? And that's one of the things that Apex does that makes us so efficient is we will plug in directly to somebody's user analytics and automatically build top 5 segment profiles for their customers, understand their personas, start building empathy maps, build a full customer journey from origin to purchase and beyond. And that's the thing, is that I think what's really happening right now, because the iterations are cool and they're needed, because you need to have like a hypothesis and you need to approach things from the scientific method when it comes to marketing. It's not a pseudoscience. Psychology is not a pseudoscience. Like, this is something that is legit. It's how people act, and you can study it. You can study behavior. And so you do those iterations, and yeah, they're awesome. But if it stops, if your curiosity about what those iterations mean and how they operate stops with the click-through rate, you're going to fail. If it stops with the purchase, you're going to fail. It can't stop there. It doesn't anymore, because it's more about the support, the services. And to Justin's point, like he said, cardboard boxes is the vehicle by which I sell my service. For us, a video is the vehicle within which we sell the powerful design thinking consulting that we're able to take to a business. One of the coffee shops that we're working with right now is already, last month, they had like 1,000 visits to their website. Their bounce rate, for those of you that don't know what a bounce rate is, it's like if somebody clicks on your website and then leaves after 5 seconds, they bounce. Peace, right? Their bounce rate was like 81%, right? We've been working with them for a month, and October's not even over yet. And we're already at like almost 5,000 visits on their website. Their bounce rate is down to 61%. And their revenue is up almost $2,000 because it didn't stop with the purchase of the video. We're trying to help them solve their problems. And along the way, they're purchasing more stuff, which keeps that relationship going. Mm-hmm. And I used to look at that money transaction as like, oh man, I should be altruistic. I should try to help people. And now I'm like, no, like this is two business owners. I'm helping you grow your revenue. You're paying me money to help you grow your revenue, which is helping me pay my people, and that's what the business world is. Money is the vehicle by which relationships are formed in the business world. And you have to take that extremely seriously. Like when somebody gives you, like right now, our average stand-up cost, right, is like $2,500. Mm-hmm. But the amount of value that is inside of that $2,500 is stupid. And they see it, they purchase it, they get the return, and already that company is almost back to where they have it. It's paid for itself, and it's going to continue to pay for itself moving forward. And that's where I think you need to end up. I surrender the mic.
Should I clap? Clap and come in. The way I look, to the point in way choice is iterations are everything. The way that, and I brought it up in the first podcast, is that so we like to fire bullets before cannonballs. So you spend the time, dialing in the method that seems to work. So it's it's A/B testing. Yes, it is. I'm trying for maybe the first week, this particular approach. Do I have any success? All right, nope, that didn't have success. Let's try a different approach. All right, does that one have success? Nope, it might not have success. If I try the third approach, yes, it has success. Cool. All right, when am I seeing this success? For me, a lot of what I do is actually stopping in person, phone calls, old school stuff. It's not as much, for our particular business, we're more of we're a business-to-business industrial product. Mm-hmm. So what Jan doesn't really do much for us. We don't see a great deal of online sales for what we do. It's more ground pounding, localized. My product cannot ship more than 100 miles competitively. It just doesn't. You don't ship empty trucks of paper a great deal of distance with any competitive advantage, unless you have a patent or something that controls it. So everything we do is iterations and how am I positioning the company in the marketplace? Is that effective? Down to what time of day am I calling? Which day of the week am I calling? When are these people most receptive? I'll never forget, I can't remember what book it was I read that told you, it talked about a study on judges. Where they found that, the sentences that a judge gave, in the morning, lighter, is you got closer to lunch, heavier. Mm-hmm. After lunch, lighter again, end of the day, heavier. Wow. Based on when people are hungry. Hangry is a true thing. Mm-hmm. It's real, my people. But you think about that. I extrapolated that to when I make my sales calls. All right, so I know my best time to get a buyer or someone on the phone is first thing in the morning, right after lunch. All right. Now, counterintuitively, I find that 4 to 5 is also a good time because while they might be hungry, they're also excited that they're about to get off of work.
Yeah.
So they're more likely to answer. The same thing works, as actually calling before 8 o'clock because you catch people off guard, calling on lunch because so many of us eat lunch at our desks, and then calling a little bit after 5 because so many people work late. But the average sales guy isn't putting that effort in. But I only learned that through different iterations of what I was trying. You know, through in the same thing is, I'll do a monthly email, but I'll have 2 or 3 different versions of that email keyed up, and I'll send them out just to see which one works. Or I've talked to these people for so long, I begin to build in my head just an intuitive understanding of their profile. So I know which guy wants the wordy email versus which person needs the bullet points versus which person says, please don't email me. I got 95 emails a day, and I feel them because I get, hundreds of emails a day.
Yeah.
And it's, even with our outboxes today, if anybody has Outlook, you've got the focus and the everything else.
Yeah.
How many of us actually read the everything else?
Not me.
Not me either.
Yeah. Hey, I have empathy for those people who are sending the ones that gets. So I delete them individually.
At a high rate of speed.
But occasionally I'll see one. I'm like, I'm gonna read with that. Oh yeah, delete. But it's to your point. It's understanding those iterations. It's not just about your message. It's how do you deliver that message. All right, and then once you get to how do you deliver that message, how do you tailor that message to the specific audience, which is one of the things, that with talking with Jan that very much interests me about what you guys do is because I believe you provide that information back to a salesperson where they can begin to better target based on a much faster way of doing it. Because let's be honest, as we've talked about, sales and marketing have become one, not because the sales guy wants to do the marketing guy's job or the marketing guy wants to do the sales guy's job. It's been done at this point out of necessity. We have less bodies, less time, and we need to find a way to force multiply what we're doing. But we also don't want to spend, as I say, there's a sweet spot in your career from about the time you start for maybe your first 5 or 6 years where you think it's just a great idea to work 12 and 16-hour days. Then you get your first divorce and it helps you become grounded and you decide, I don't want to do this anymore. 8 to 10 is about the max I get. You guys were making fun of me before we started, but there's a reason I get up early. It's so I can be done at 5 o'clock to be with my family. Right. So I want products like what you guys offer that allow me to gain the insights I need to gain, but it doesn't take me 3 hours of research to do it.
And that right there is when you are selling a service, right? And we talked at the beginning about how to sell product or service and how to identify unidentified needs, right?
Yep.
You're never going to know what you don't know unless you start talking to the customer about things that they don't talk to other people about. So my dad always used to say, you can't sell a $50,000 ventilator on a 5-cent relationship, right? And a lot of times salesmen will mess up and all they want to do is talk about what their product does, how innovative it is, like how it's going to solve all these issues, when it hit the market, all of the research that went into it, the massive team of scientists. The customer doesn't give a shit. They want to know, what is it going to do for me? Is it going to help me solve a problem? And are you going to take care of me once I buy it? Because you're really only ever selling 2 things, right? Convenience or sustenance. You're either keeping someone alive or making something easier for somebody. And if you can't satisfy those needs, if you can't appeal and understand by going into that room, and like Justin said, get on their LinkedIn, see, do they have kids that are in sports? Do they have a family at home? What makes them tick? What type of books do they like to read? Because people post that type of stuff. And these are all the types of data insights that we can get from our AI, right? And you can go through and look at all this stuff so that when you're talking to that person, you're like, hey, this product or service, it's not only going to benefit your top line revenue, which I know that you want to be able to do so that you can provide either more benefits to your employees or take home a bigger paycheck yourself. But on top of that, the amount of time that you're going to be able to save means that you're going to be able to get to Jimmy's baseball game more often during the week, because it's going to take 3 hours of time off of your, plate a day. These other types of things. Now you have to be able to feel out the room, because there's some people that don't want that. They want to be able to feel the difference between work and home, and they don't like to mix the two. But you have to be able to pick that up, right? That's why you can't just plug AI into something and then let it run, because it can't read that empathetic side. It can't read
Right.
people's eye contact. It can't read that emotion when you're talking to somebody. You know, it's starting to be able to pick up tone of voice and natural language processing and all this other stuff. But AI will never get to the point where if a human is sitting in front of another human, to be able to understand and empathize with where that person's coming from based off of the vibes, right, that are coming off of that person.
Which is, it's
I'll
interesting
put that
because a lot of communication is actually nonverbal.
Mm-hmm.
And AI just doesn't have that capability.
Dude, the amount of time I've spent studying micro expressions is just, I think they're so fascinating. And it's crazy. Like once you start studying things like micro expressions and body language, how easy it is to pick up on stuff, the nonverbals, you know?
Have you run across this? He was, I think, the first guy to study. What was his name? Ekman?
Might be.
His first name. Have you seen the show Lie to Me?
Mm-hmm.
The character is based off of the scientist Ekman.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he actually
look it
went to Africa and studied tribes and to see if our facial expressions
We'll ask
are
Jamie to pull that
I
up.
loved that show, and it's no longer on.
No,
It was a great show.
it was.
It was, and there's actually a really good book written by an FBI agent that talks about how to capitalize on nonverbal skills.
It's a negotiation book.
I have it in my
Maybe this
my
is what
vast
we
Audible
this is
account.
what we end on.
It's Paul Ekman.
That's right. It is Paul Ekman.
Yep.
And he does work for Hollywood now.
I like how you said Jamie, though. I just connected that.
There you go. Yeah.
Took me a minute.
No, Sam is my Jamie, but Sam's not here right now.
Yeah, that's interesting now because a lot of communication is nonverbal.
Mm-hmm.
And
That's why
this Lie to Me show studying micro expressions, and how does that relate to sales?
Well, I was going to kind of get there, but yes, I mean, there is a certain amount of, and this is getting a little away from what we're talking, but there's a certain amount of skill and talent needed in a salesperson.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody who can recognize that. Some of the best salespeople are, they're chameleons, but in a genuine way.
Mm-hmm.
To what Jan brought up earlier, you can get on their LinkedIn and see what their kids do or what their interests are. Well, salespeople have always done that, walking into someone's office, and it's incredibly transparent. All right, it's oh hey, I see you like Ohio State. Yeah, every other salesperson who walks into this office tries to hit me on that. All right, it's not but it's the sales guy who can do it in such a subtle way, who can match their mannerisms to the person in front of them talking, who can use
The reflection
what
principle.
emotional intelligence teaches us is the mirroring technique.
There it is.
I've done a bunch of the EI courses up at Case over the years, which, if you're a salesperson, that's money very well spent. But to teach you how to have that higher level emotional intelligence where you can build that relationship in such a subtle way the other side doesn't realize you're doing it. To some degree, you don't realize you're doing it.
It just becomes natural.
I find myself doing it in some ways, and it's like, okay, that worked.
Yeah.
I didn't mean to do it that way. But that's the mark of a that's not just a great salesperson. That's somebody who, that they can run companies, they can do things because, they can also do that with employees, with staff. It's the ability to get people on your side.
Yeah. The best way to be a good salesman these days is just to be a servant leader. Being straight up.
I feel like this ties into what we've been talking about because it's, again, like, what is my experience? Like, if you're trying to sell me something, if you're a salesman and I'm like a potential buyer, what is my experience going to be with you if you can, mirror some of my emotions and interests versus like, Jan, let's say you can't do that.
Have you ever tried to talk to, like he said, that you try to talk to somebody that like, it looks like you're knocking on the door, but the lights ain't on? They're a couple bricks short of a pallet.
I feel like I'm like that sometimes.
No, I mean, like, we're definitely all like that, right?
Yeah.
But like you feel like you're talking either like past somebody or somebody feels like they're being talked at rather than talked to.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
That's probably the best way that I could describe it, is that if you can't pick up on those types of things, your customer is going to end up feeling like you're talking at them, not to them. And it completely misses that empathetic human side. And to his point, that's why investing in something like EI courses can really help you learn to talk to your customer. And I'll wrap up like my 2 cents on it with, you have 2 ears and 1 mouth. If you ask questions and don't just go in there, like I don't go in there with a pitch anymore. I have an idea of what I want to tell the customer, right? I don't go in there with a solid pitch. I used to. But at this point, I go in and I'm just like, what do you need? You agreed to have this appointment. So at this point, you want me here. What can I help you solve? And then I reverse engineer my pitch based on a 20-minute conversation, literally me sitting there, mouth shut, ears open, because now I know what they know and I know what I know, and I can put that together as a solution custom tailored for that person that makes them feel like I paid attention to them because they got the chance to express themselves and what their needs are, their insecurities, and what they need to get accomplished before I even started trying to pitch them a sale.
No, that makes sense. I mean, what I do now is, I typically will send out, to your point, I don't go in there with the standard spiel any longer. What I usually do is I send somebody a 6-point agenda before I go there. I almost never actually bring that agenda up. That agenda is mostly intended to prime the customer so that they're thinking about things that they want to talk about beforehand. That starts off with, how does your current program work? What are the things you like about that program? What are the things you don't like about that program? Right? What are just some general knowledge gathering things about, how does this work? How does your cost structure go together? And then always the last thing is, what do we do? What are our products? I almost never get there. Because to Jan's point, if they want to know, they can go look up the website and find out everything we do. And I don't need to sit there and tell them, hey, we make boxes. They're square typically, put stuff in them.
Some of them are corrugated.
Yeah, we don't have to do that. So it's all about getting them, comfortable. You want to get people comfortable with you. All right. That's the job of a salesperson. It's a terrible cliche, but it's a fairly accurate one, is that, people don't buy the product you're selling. They're buying you.
Yep.
All right. They're paying for, I'm comfortable with this guy. I'm fairly positive he's not going to screw me. I'll buy stuff from him. And my biggest weakness is, I'm almost too customer centric at times. I was like, I'll take a hit for the company to make sure that you're okay. And I know that 7 out of 10 people, because, there are the 30% of people who are just, D-bags.
I was going to say jackasses, but
I was trying to, but they're going to remember that. And I want to, I might be losing now, but I know I'll make that up later.
Yeah.
You got to own it.
That's it. That's
extremely. You got to extremely own it. Like extreme ownership.
Like Yakko?
Like Yakko Willenick.
Oh, man.
Well, Justin, I want to thank you for being here with us today. I think this was a great episode. I definitely learned a lot.
I feel like, I was going to say, like, the last episode that we recorded, I feel like you were sitting on the floor wide-eyed, just like you are right now. Like, your mind, like, gets blown every time we record one of these. I love it.
I love doing this. And to the people who have made it this far in this episode, thank you for listening. And that's a wrap, I guess.
Yeah, cool. All right, y'all. If you want to try to support us, right, there's a couple of ways you could do so. You heard Jacob Popio talk about it in the beginning. But the biggest thing that you can do right now is we're getting ready for a website launch coming up here in the first week of November. So when November comes around, if you're listening to this, and it might be a couple of years from now, so you can go back and just check out the website. But that website is www.chasetheapex.com. I would highly, highly recommend you go check that out. Not for any other reason other than the fact that we're going to be putting out a ton of educational material in the next couple of months. And so if you listen to this at any point past November of 2020, all those resources are going to be there. They're going to be continuing to grow, and we're going to be trying to provide all of you guys as much value as we possibly can. So go ahead and check that out. And until next time, keep chasing that apex.